Here we are, boys and girls. Before anybody else wakes up and gets here, we'll kind of walk on a little tour. Where are we at now? We're back from the flight line a little bit. Ouch. So we can kind of see who else is around here. Just a minute. Coming, sir. Let's go walk through the booth. Say hello, Al. Swift cowling and the new Swift cowling. Very different looking. Everyone is still setting the place up. Hi guys. Well, HUD's not going to make it today, so we could even pull one of the tables out.
Where do we put it?
HUD is not making it today.
Oh, just set it. Where can we put one?
Just put it out in front of the camper.
Okay.
And get it out of here. Yeah, because we
Carl, we need to move this Oldsmobile.
Making a pit stop at Indy. The airplane is usually up on jacks before the pilot even gets out of the cockpit. truly technical pieces of art. Call it comportment, call it pizzazz, call it sex, call it what you will. When you see an airplane that has true class, you know it instantly. It is our intent that all LoPresti Piper airplanes possess these traits. The Swift was conceived by people who hadn't worked for Curtiss, so the physical appearance of the airplane is closely related to the Curtiss P-40. The airplane has good heritage. We selected the name Swiftfire for this airplane to tie together its past heritage with the gutsy, marvelous airplane. LoPresti Piper Aircraft Engineering Company. Stuart Millar's financial acumen, good business sense, and deep and thorough understanding of what all airplane things are about teamed up with Roy LoPresti's Skunk Works team and have developed this marvelous airplane. LoPresti Piper Aircraft Engineering Company's charter is to build exciting airplanes. In fact, to build the best damn airplanes anybody's ever seen. That's our task. That's our mission. It's important for us to do that personally. It's important for Piper. It's important for the personal airplane community. In fact, it's important for our country. It's a task that we at LoPresti Piper don't take very lightly. We intend to build the best airplanes you have ever seen. We are creating classic old airplanes whose performance and appearance are simply our shop team is made up of craftsmen who truly care about what they're doing and turn out pieces and parts and assemblies very quickly. Our experimental shop is run by Jack Jansen and supports flight testing around the clock if necessary to help assure that development time is compressed. Often when I come back from a full stop, I feel like I'm making a pit stop in India. The airplane is moving up on the gas.
Cranking there, work it out on your calculator.
So how'd we do today, guys?
We done okay.
Thumbs up.
Not bad at all.
Siskel and Ebert would say.
That's who?
Hi, Carl.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I thought you said Sister Amelia. That's why I said, how did you know it's myself?
The airplanes share some common traits. They've all been beautiful, they've all been fast, and they've
Yeah, I need the long one.
all-grade airplanes are truly technical pieces of art. Call it comportment, call it pizzazz, call it sex, call it what you will. When you see an airplane that has true class, you know it instantly. It is.
So, quite seriously, we do have someone that's interesting and intelligent and certainly informative here very shortly. And I'm sure most of you already know that there's a new Swift on the horizon. So this year, in addition to conversation about the what we now today call the original Swift and the maintenance and operation of that airplane, we'll talk as well about the new airplane. So I thought we had scheduled our forum today so that we wouldn't have to compete with the warbirds, but I think I may have misfigured that by a little bit. I hear one or two out there. But our forum is scheduled to last for an hour and 15 minutes. And Roy and Kurt LoPresti will be over shortly. And they will talk, there they are in the back, okay? And they will talk with you about the new airplane. But I thought I'd take a couple of minutes in the beginning and explain to you what has taken place up to now and where they're involved. And then after the visit and update from the LoPrestis, then we'll spend some time on questions and answers about the original airplane, the maintenance and operation availability, and all. And then Kurt will bring you up to date on the what I'm calling the September Swift. The September Swift is the modernized original Swift with all the aerodynamic cleanup and the nice little creature comforts and those things of that nature. And as they'll explain to you, that airplane in a very unique manner will be powered by 180 Lycoming carburetors. Beautiful airplane, beautiful innovations. So to not take anything away from them, we're going to talk to Roy, talk to you first. It's my pleasure to introduce and present to you Mr. Roy LoPresti.
Thank you all. We're very happy to be here. I got to tell you that I've always loved the Swift since 1946. I'll tell you all that. That's a marvelous airplane. And it's a great opportunity for us to do something that we love very much. And it's all because of just a number of things. You know, in life, skill's important, but luck is better. If you have to choose your luck and skill, I'll take luck every time. And luckily ran Stuart Millar, and here we are. And my son Kurt, my son Jim, my son Dave, and my wife, and a number of very, very good people are all working together to do some awfully good things in the Swift and the Comanche. The first airplane we're starting with is the 180 horsepower. I can't hear back there, man. No. 180, that better? 180 horsepower Swift. And Kurt is the project engineer on all the Swifts. And I think what I'll do, I'll sort of fill in on the turbine Swifts, if I can close to that. And then Kurt and I will describe to you what we've done on the Swift so far and what our plan is. But before I forget, I need to ask you to do one thing for us. And that is, Stuart Millar, who owns Piper, is here this weekend. And he's here for one primary reason, and that is to get a feeling from the buying public what they want. Now, Stuart has one goal in life, one mission in life, and that is to put life back into the small airplane business, regardless of how difficult that might be. And to show you how firm he is in this conviction, he's reduced the price of all the Piper airplanes 20% and the price of all spare parts 50%. His philosophy is this: in the conventional wisdom of Cessna and Beech, and to a lesser extent Mooney, when the business got bad and you sold fewer airplanes, you raised the prices. And when the business got worse, you sold fewer airplanes, you raised the prices more. And pretty soon, nobody can buy anything. So what Stuart did was to subtract from the price by 20% for the airplane and 50% for the spare parts. The theory being, if the airplanes cost less, you will sell more. Reduce the price still further. It's his conviction that's going to work. I hope he's right. It's a big gamble in a part. But what he's here for this weekend is to see the people and get a sense of what you want. And so at the LoPresti Piper booth, you will find, besides all the Swift things, you will find a questionnaire. I urge you all to go to the booth, to see the very nice tape we put together, which I think you'll find exciting to see the new airplane that's there. But please fill out the questionnaire as objectively and as carefully and as candidly as you want. Be caustic if you want to. Stuart wants to know what everybody thinks. And he will digest everybody's comments and decide which airplane gets built first. We can't build them all simultaneously. We'd like to build a 180 horsepower tail dragger Swift. We'd like to build a turbine-powered airplane. We have one on display that's 2-place. We would probably build that in a 4-place because the people so far have indicated they like the airplane, they want 4 seats. So we got to know your comments, and since you've lived with Swift for a long time, I think you can tell better than anybody else what a real Swift owner likes. You represent the kind of people who. And just so you understand, LoPresti Piper is not part of Piper. We're a separate company, owned partly by Stewart and partly by me, mostly by Stewart. And our only function is to develop new airplanes. We give the entire airplane package to Stuart Millar. He takes that and Piper certifies it, Piper produces it, Piper markets it. And we go back and do another airplane. And we're working on the 2 Swifts that I mentioned. On the Comanche, we're looking at all new low-cost airplane. A $40,000 airplane, totally new, sort of a modern 1992 J3 Cub, but with good performance and good looks. That's going to start very shortly. We have, we're supposed to have had here today, a new heads-up display. That can go in small airplanes, very expensive, so you can see, looking out the windshield, what you need to see to fly the airplane visually and land without looking down inside the cockpit. And you'll see some of these things at our booth. You'll see things coming up very frequently. And I think we ought to get back now to tell you all about the 180 horsepower Swift. And Kurt has control of that. He and I will kind of share this mic as best we can. Kurt?
Okay, we chose the 180 horsepower Lycoming strictly on a cost basis. The 200 might have been a little more desirable, but we got $500 more, which is about a third of increase over what the 180 is. And we have been able to eliminate some of the bump on the bottom of most by having a carburetor mounted in a horizontal plane on the front of the sum. So we're going to end up with a very slick cow and hopefully save some money and not really hurt the performance much. The airplane's going to have evaluation of the changes we had in mind. We went through about 25 changes, and with the help of technology and the VS Aero computational aerodynamics program, we reduced the pressure drag of the entire airplane by about 37%. And the way the numbers are coming out right now, it looks like the airplane will easily exceed a 200 mile an hour top speed with the 180. Part of the changes that we looked at was a leading edge cuff similar to the one on the Buckaroo, but it's actually a series of brand new airfoils that help develop a favorable pressure gradient between the wing and the fuselage, and also makes the wing a little thicker in the area that the gear retracts, so we're able to eliminate a large portion of the bump on the bottom of the wing.
We'll just switch this microphone back and forth so we don't get too worn out speaking. I want to tell you one thing about controls that we're doing that's totally different on this airplane and different from most other airplanes. I've got a personal thing with controls in airplanes. The engine can stop, the radios can quit, the plane catch on fire, but the controls absolutely must work all the time. And so what we have in this airplane is, as you all very well know, there are 2 elevators and 2 horns on the Swift horizontal tail. We're running push rods from each elevator surface up to the stick. So there's complete redundancy in the pitch system. If for some reason the bolt isn't put in right and the bolt comes out of one of the joints and you lose, say, the left-hand elevator, you can still fly the right-hand elevator. We have push rods going out to the ailerons, and if a bolt comes loose, or the aileron comes disconnected, or the aileron breaks, or some portion of the aileron system breaks, you can fly the plane with the other half. So you have complete redundancy in both roll and in pitch. And each of these systems has a very, very carefully controlled series of roller bearings that reduce the friction to, an absolute minimum. You go back to when we were younger, I used to have a 55 Ford, which I thought was marvelous. And I drove one about a month ago or so, and I thought, it drives like a truck. You forget how the older things go. And today's cars, there's no backlash from the steering wheel. There's no slop in the system. The airplane should be that way. And if you fly a beach or they've all got backlash in their control system. The new Swift will have as close to zero backlash as you can possibly have, and as close to zero friction as you can possibly have. The result will be is that any force you feel in that control system is going to be the aerodynamic forces, not friction, not springs. It's just going to be a delightful airplane. So when you fly this airplane, the new Swift, it's going to be a new kind of vehicle, and you're going to just love it to death.
Another portion of the new control system is we've changed the aileron contours, and we have incorporated a very nice wiper seal that'll keep the the high pressure air on the bottom of the wing from leaking through, which should help reduce drag. And by pinching the wing down in front of the aileron, we've made the boundary layer a lot thinner than it would have been. And so the aileron won't have to move as much through dead air to get to where it can actually do some good.
We are not going to change the flap system at all. The hinges will still be out in the breeze, but we do plan to put fairings over the flap hinges and to reduce the drag of that part of the flap. Also, the flap seal, sort of like a Mooney seal, we put in place. Like Kurt said, the ailerons are totally new. The wing will have no corrugated skins, internal ribs. And all the fuel will be in a single wing fuel tank either side in the outboard panel only, 25 gallons per side. So the very special flush door on the outside, so that there are no questions in the aerodynamic contour. Also, the entire wing skin, the outer panel, there's two pieces. The skin goes from the trailing edge spar on top around the leading edge, the trailing edge spar on the bottom, and there's only one seam. It's a chordwise seam at mid-span. We do that by buying special aluminum and 5-foot wide width. So 2 5-foot wide sections cover the entire wing, and it will all be flush with it.
We also now have a new retractable tail wheel that Air Right in Wichita did for us that changes the attitude on the airplane by about 2 degrees, so your over-the-nose vision will be a lot better. And it should be a lot easier to three-point the airplane. Part of the aerodynamic changes involve moving the wing forward 4 inches, and that will increase the distance between the tail wheel and the main wheel on the ground, and that should also help with the three-pointing problem that some of the Swifts have.
The tail wheel looks very much like what you see on an F4U, kind of a tall tail wheel, but it retracts through the same hole you have in the present Swift, and I'm pretty sure it will be retrofittable to all the present Swifts. We try wherever possible to consider the older airplanes. I have great empathy toward the owners of the present Swifts, and wherever we can do this, we'll make our changes as compatible as we can with what you all have right now. But the tail wheel will look like an F4U. The F4U is the same problem, if you want to call that, you have on a Swift today. It's a little difficult to three-point. And the F4U, you may not know, had a shorter tail wheel before and went to a longer tail wheel for that particular reason. Oh yes, the creature comforts in the cockpit. We spent a lot of time thinking about how to make it more comfortable in the airplane, and what's some of the things you'd like to see. And we've got some very, very neat ideas. And they're very simple in a sense. Usually in an airplane you fly left hand on the stick if you have a stick, and our airplanes will have sticks, by the way, and your arm forward for the throttle. And if you think about it, it's kind of an uncomfortable position. So we played with different throttle positions, and the most comfortable position is the arm bent like it wants to be normally, just like your hand is bent for the stick. So we put the throttle in the same fuselage station fore and aft as the stick. And we made a very simple throttle extension and found it where it had to be. Now we'll have a very slim console down the center, about 3 inches wide. And in the console will be the throttle control, propeller control, the mixture control, the tail flap control, all in one very tight little console. And on the throttle will be a series of switches. There will be, operated by your thumb, which moves back and forth. There will be a speed brake switch. There will be a flap throttle. There will be a boost pump switch on the throttle. There will be a landing light switch on the throttle. reasons, and reasonably good reasons. When you land the airplane, I have a habit, many people do, is raising the flaps and you touch down. Rather than fumbling for a flap switch, just lift your thumb and bam, it's right there. And you don't ever make the mistake of grabbing the doggone landing gear switch rather than the flap switch. Those of you who are landing at night on a clear night, and as you round out into a fog bank you didn't see, and suddenly the whole world turns white, will appreciate having the landing light switch right by your thumbs. You kill the light instantly. I've had, on 2 occasions, flown an airplane in the VFR night flight, entered some ground fog, and fumbled around the panel trying to find the doggone landing light switch to kill it, and almost lost the airplane. So the landing light switch, the fuel boost pump switch, the speed brake switch, and the flap up and down switch are all smack on the throttle. It's kind of a military-ish kind of a throttle handle. On the stick will be made so you can grasp it like a normal stick. However, immediately in the front of the little handle is a wavy or corrugated section that happens to match your fingertips, all 5 fingertips. So you put your hand around the stick, and with your fingers squeezing this little corrugated part, you're flying the airplane with fingertips only. The heel of your hand is far enough off the basic stick, so the heel of your hand is not on the stick. Or for those cases where you've got to grab the stick for any reason, you can still grab the stick. But you fly the airplane just with your fingertips and those corrugations made to fit your 5 fingertips. We have a plan for the instrument panel that's under investigation right now. Let me have Kurt describe the instrument panel.
The instrument panel that we're looking at first is a section of segments that in the middle are parallel to a fuselage station, and as you go out towards different gauges, there's an angle, and what the angle will do is allow your eyeball to be more nearly perpendicular to the instrument when you look at it, to really cut down on the parallax. A series of circuit breakers mounted on in a sawtooth type arrangement that will work pretty well, because when the circuit breaker pops out of this, you'll be able to see the white band around it very easily. You'll be able to tell which one it is. It's actually popped. One of the other neat things that we looked at on the Swift was we had a handling qualities expert named Roger Ho from Systems Technology in California do a handling evaluation of the Swift, and his recommendations was that the control forces on the Swift were too light. But we put a bob weight on the airplane and experimented with it, and although it raised the stick force per G and per knot, it kind of took a lot of the fun out of flying the Swift, which is one of the things that we really didn't want to do. So what we kind of thought we would do was come up with a way to have variable stability in the airplane. And I test drove a new Ford Probe recently that had a button on it that allows you to adjust the suspension in the car from normal to what they call sport. And what we're looking at doing is having a switch somewhere in the cockpit that will make the Swift fly like a heavy airplane, like a Saratoga or Dakota when you're flying instruments. And then you hit a button and the Swift will fly like a Swift again.
It doesn't sound all that bad, folks. I'm going to explain it. The stick force per knot, based on Air Force handling qualities for a fighter, says that you should have no pounds per G in the airplane. That's a very light stick force. The Swift that we're flying today has about 2.5 pounds per G, which means you control high G loads very easily in an airplane. And as the airplane gets faster and faster, as the Swift will, you stand a better and better chance of overstressing the wing. So we need to get more stick force per G, and as Kurt said, we try to bob weight it first, but the dynamics were a little peculiar. And our plan is to put an anti-servo tab, just like the trim tab on one side, but on the other half. I think the trim tab is on the left elevator. Put the same size tab on the right-hand elevator, and it'll use a mechanical linkage that drives that tab, like an anti-servo tab on, say, a Grumman Tiger or some of the Piper products. And you can make the linkage such that when the elevator goes up, the tab goes further up, which tries to push the tail down, and you provide some stick force. It's easy to take that mechanical device that drives that little tab with a little thing in the cockpit that allows you to change the linkage. So you can go from like 3 pounds per G to maybe 6 or 7 pounds per G, but probably not like a Saratoga. Just there'll be a modest change in stick force per G, so you'll have some control over that from the cockpit, and it's just a novel and very, very neat thing to have. So you can, if you want to fly cross country, you don't want very, very small stick forces, you want modest stick forces. But if you want to go out and have fun Sunday afternoon, you want light stick forces. Nobody else outside of an F-16 has the ability to vary stick forces in an airplane. Most planes have just a simple mechanical connection. Some have bob weights, some have down springs, but they're all fixed. And once you build the airplane that way, that's the way the airplane is forever. We're not saying today we definitely will do this, but we are going to do one, put it on the airplane and assess it. And if we like it, and if the cost is modest, we may put it in.
Well, that's... Is there anybody who has any questions?
What type of speed brake system are you What type of speed brake system are you putting in?
We're working with Precise Flight in Oregon on that, and it'll probably be one that comes out of the fuselage.
The speed brakes that we have several choices. We can work with an existing speed brake manufacturer. I've worked with Precise Flight before on Moonies and on beach airplanes, or we can make our own. And I can't tell you what it's going to be like yet, but the logical place to put the speed brake appears to be in the fuselage, because the places that ought to go on the wing happen to be the places where the fuel tanks are. And we don't want to do that. It needs to be, if it's on the wing, it needs to be outboard of the horizontal tail so the disturbed flow doesn't impact the tail. And outboard of the wing joint is where the fuel tanks are, so we don't want to do that either. So probably it will go on the fuselage. We have not really zeroed in that very carefully so far, but in my opinion, the airplane ought to be equipped as an option with speed brakes have on the airplane. And I think many of you people who fly the airplane, especially aerobatically, the airplane drag on occasion, not all the. Any other question about what we said so far? Yes, ma'am. Say again. The question is, do we plan to retain the winch for the canopy? No, the winch that's in the airplane we have is there simply to yank the canopy off the airplane. You have to jump out, and we don't expect. So it's strictly a flight test piece of hardware that we have on our test airplane. Yes, sir. But, well, we need to evaluate probably 3 or 4 panel arrangements. It's just starting right now. And you know, design is just a big compromise between what you'd like to have, what you can afford to have, and how it all looks. And we're going to look at a conventional panel, you know, a flat panel essentially, versus this segmented panel. And if it's a segmented panel, it'll probably be a piece of composite, because we can make the whole thing in one piece, and it'll be far less expensive than making it out of aluminum. But right now we'll compare what you might call a standard panel, flat panel, versus a curvilinear panel, and look at them both. Charlie said timetable. Let me tell you where we are. The Turbine Swift just flew for the first time last week. We've got about 60 days of fine-tuning the airplane when we get back to Vero Beach. And then I give the entire package to Stuart Millar and tell him what it will cost to certify the airplane. The airplane that Kurt's working on very heavily is 180 horsepower tail dragger 2-place airplane. That should fly approximately the middle of October. And before the year is over, Kurt will have that total package together to Stuart Millar. He'll know what it will cost. From that point forward, it's fundamentally about 12 months' time to get the tooling squared away, get the airplane certified, and get ready for production. So the soonest you will see a brand new production Swift is at the end of next year. That's probably a slightly optimistic time, because things like that never work out like you plan. Things can take longer. I think there's a Parkinsonian law that says it always takes more time than you think. But that's the schedule we're on right now. tell you about the fuel system. We looked at a whole bunch of fuel systems in airplanes, and you've probably seen articles in Aviation Consumer about why doesn't the crazy industry. I'm sorry, do it. Why doesn't the industry put in flexible fuel bags in the airplane because they are better in a crash? Well, every fuel system, as you probably know, has its problems. None of them are perfect. And it always boils down to someone's judgment based on a whole bunch of past experience. I've had a lot of experience with fuel cells. Lots of them have been bad. They wrinkle, they come unglued from the airplane, they give you false fuel readings. A lot of funny things. Integral tanks have leak problems. By far the simplest system, and I think in general they're probably the best all-around system, is a system that the Swift had from the beginning, a simple tank buried inside the wing. And our plan today is to put a 25-gallon tank like that in the wing outer panel, located about 3/4 of an inch inside the bottom skin, with an abrasive piece between the tank and the supports on the ribs. The tank will be between the front spar and the rear spar, so it's very, very well protected structurally in case of an off-airport landing. In my opinion, that tank is not only very, very good, it's relatively safe, and it can be repaired very easily, as you know, because you can pull the wing panels off the airplane, slip the tanks out, repair it, slip it back in again. So that's the kind of fuel system that we envision for the Swift. The airplane is going to be stressed at gross weight for 6 Gs positive and 3 Gs negative, which are the aerobatic load factors. And it'll be that load factor at the airplane's gross weight rather than some reduced weight. It doesn't cost much in the way of extra structure to give you that extra little bit of margin. And Stuart Millar is kind of a fanatic on this. He flew P-47s in World War II, which is the only airplane he ever flew that had no red line. You'd go straight down with the throttle at the firewall, and you could not exceed any red line because there wasn't any. And that's what we like to have in the Swift. And I said, Stuart, that's very nice, but we can give you something not quite that good because that would make the airplane weigh just a whole bunch more. We're going to have it good for at least 6 Gs positive or at least 3 Gs negative at the airplane's gross weight. So it'll be one sturdy machine. Yes, sir. Say again? Oh, on a turbine airplane, it's going to be 350 knots, and on the lower horsepower Lycoming airplane. Rock, what did we decide on? Rocky Howard is our chief of structures back there. I've kind of forgotten now. It's pretty high.
About 250 to 260 knots.
Okay. It's much more to raise the red line of the airplane in terms of structure or anything else. Usually the red line is a function of flutter limits and structural limits. And we've just completed the flutter test on the turbine airplane, and we'll have our flutter limitation removed very shortly. But the number needs to be high. There's no reason to have a low red line limit on an airplane. Engineers are funny guys. They always try to get the last little teensy bit out of everything, So if they can save a pound here or 10 ounces here, they want to do that. Feature that on the Bonanza. You get the last little bitty metal out of that wing spar fitting. Well, you got to know where to spend your money in this business and where to spend your weight. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as Stuart Millar's concerned, as far as Rocky Howard's concerned, we want this airplane to be very stout and very strong, so you don't have to worry about flying an airplane during the rough air or anything else. So it'll be one very sturdy airplane. Yes, sir. The question is, do we anticipate raising the gross weight and the useful load? I think you have to. Weight always hurts performance a little bit, but yes, very definitely. Was it 1,900 pounds now, Charlie? Okay. I think with the changes in the airplane, you'll see a gross weight of just a little under 2,000 pounds for the standard. 2,400 pounds for the turbine Swift, depending on how many gallons of fuel you actually put in the turbine Swift. But unfortunately, gross is going to go up a little bit. The best thing to do in an airplane when you want to go faster is get the drag down. And if you want more useful load, get the empty weight down. So we have not had the chance so far to carefully analyze the entire structure. And that's going to be Rocky Howard's task to do. If we can increase the useful load and not change the gross, we're going to do that first. That's harder to do, but it's better to do. And so if we find we can't get useful load without raising the gross, we're going to have to raise the gross a little bit. So that'll be the court of last resort. Yes, sir. The question is, are we going to remove the slots in the wing, and if so, how are we going to handle this? Purchased Jack Noggles airplane, which you probably know has a twisted wing without these slots. We purchased Horace Noble's wing, which is a non-twisted wing with a very big standard stall strip. We hired Roger Ho from Systems Technology, who's a handling specialist. I've used Roger for the past 20 years. We flew both those airplanes at F-center of gravity forward. And it may be surprising to you, but a properly rigged Swift stalls quite well. The Jack Noggles airplane with the clean twisted wing stalls 7 miles an hour slower than the standard Swift. Jack's airplane does not have any stall strip on the leading edge of the wing. The Horace Noble's airplane, which is closer to a standard Swift, has a very long stall strip. It stalls 7 miles an hour higher. You can recover in Horace Noble's airplane. Airplane took a lot more altitude to recover. So although lower stall speeds are always good, if you stall Jack's airplane in altitude. So what we're going to do is use a wing that's clean like Noggles, but put a stall strip on, but not as long as the standard stall strip that's in the standard Swift. It'll be about for 30 to 40% of the stall strip size in the standard Swift, which means we're going to give away probably 4 miles an hour in stall speed, but not allow you to get so deeply into the stall that recovery is very long. Life is a compromise in the airplane business, but that's our approach right now. We plan not to twist the wing, to use a standard Swift configuration, but to use a small stall strip, take the corrugations off, take the the slots off the wing, and flush the whole wing. Yes, sir. The question was, is the stick left-handed for the pilot? Yes, well, I guess it needs to be in concrete now, and if you have a strong objection, I think you need to express it in that form we have. The present plan is center throttle, left-hand stick for the pilot, right-hand stick for the other operator. I had a little difficulty with that at first because I've been an Air Force pilot and I always flew right-hand stick. So at first flying left-hand stick was a little tricky, especially in close formation. But I now have probably 100 hours or so on the Swifts, and I'm very comfortable flying left-hand stick. The airplane's not really wide enough, in my opinion, to have 2 sets of throttles and 2 sticks. But you know, if that's a serious consideration and you feel that way, we'll be happy to consider it. That's our new Swift. Please put it on your form if you have a serious problem with flying left-hand stick, we'd like to hear about it. But right now, the approach we're on is left-hand power stick, center power quadrant. Yes, sir. Oh no, a stick between your legs on your center line, but you fly with your left hand on the stick. We had considered sidearm controllers, but again, there's not enough room to put a sidearm controller in the Swift very comfortably. It's a comfortable but somewhat snug airplane, and you've got to be careful how you spend your real estate. Yes, sir. The question is, are we considering right-hand brakes as standard? Let me tell you what we're doing, because it's awfully, awfully neat. You know, airplane people are miles behind car people. And you say, well, why don't they do something like, look at what we're doing. We're putting on a system for evaluation. I'm not telling you we're going to do this because we haven't built it yet. We have
a master cylinder being built that's a dual master cylinder. 2 master cylinders in series, just like modern cars have. Each wheel housing will have 2 brake pucks. The aft brake puck is controlled by the aft master cylinder, and the right brake puck, the forward brake puck, is controlled by the forward master cylinder. You would have to lose 2 independent brake systems to lose complete braking in the airplane. And cars do this all the time. You have a modern car, you have 2 master cylinders in a row. Usually one master cylinder drives front, right, and left, rear. The other master cylinder drives left, front, right, rear. So if you lose half your braking system, you still can control the vehicle. On a Swift, you need the brakes to steer the airplane. So we are now developing a dual master cylinder that will give you complete redundancy in the brakes. We have redundancy in brakes, redundancy in the pitch system, and redundancy in the roll system. Oh, right side pilot brakes. Can you answer that question, Kurt? We're looking at a new set of rudder pedals where the master cylinders are actually mounted between the pedals on a torque tube that interconnects the 2 sides together. So either pilot can operate the same master cylinder. So instead of having 4 master cylinders, we just have 2. They can be controlled by either side. If there is, it'll be an expensive one. That's Piper's decision. Let me go on. Yes, sir. What about grass fields? Well, you know, the Swifts today, I've got to admit a little bit of ignorance about grass field operation in the airplane, Charlie. But the airplane will have the same size tires all around that you have on the airplanes today. It may weigh 100 pounds more, and I don't see any real problem in that. Let me tell you about the turbine Swift. We started the Lycoming powered Swift just about the first of the year, and it was only about 3.5 months ago. I was in talking to Stuart Millard, and I said, you know, Stuart, the airplane's come along very nicely, but I know for a fact that the airline industry needs to have a turbine powered trainer because they're finding difficulty getting airline pilots. They used to come from the military, and that source is almost dried up. And many schools now are teaching people to become airline pilots, and they're teaching them a whole bunch of things. That's the supersonic Swift going on. So I thought the plane would allow us to find out whether it made any sense or not. And I saw Stuart, and he said, what will it cost? And I told him, he said, go ahead and do it. That's about how long our meetings are, like 60 seconds. It's so marvelous working with Stuart because there are no committee meetings, no board meetings, no groups to make decisions. It's just him. And I can generally get an answer that's fairly complex and sometimes very expensive within 2 minutes or so. He said, go ahead and do it. And I said, Stuart, we'll have you an airplane flying in 100 days. And I didn't have to take 100 days and a half. I told him 100 days because it just sounded great. And it worked out to be 101 days from start to first flight. And I'm very pleased with the airplane. It's just a very exciting airplane. You take the basic airplane, you get some drag out of the airplane, you add some horsepower, and it becomes very, very exciting. It has the same characteristics as your Swift. It's easy to land. The only problem so far is that you cannot use full power on takeoff. It's not a D-rated engine, it's 420 horsepower. And in order to make a takeoff at full power, you have to start with full right rudder and just follow kind of a curved path on the runway. And before you complete that curve, you're airborne. And but in our opinion, in my opinion, that airplane could be used by the airline pilot training schools. It can be used by the wealthy sportsman who always wanted a P-51 and may not have been able to fly a P-51. And incidentally, Stuart and I flew a P-51 6 weeks ago. It's a plane I always wanted to fly. Stuart flew it in World War II. I didn't get to do that during Korea.
but we finally flew a 51. And we buzzed the hell out of Vero Beach, I'll tell you. We won't forget that for a while. But the Turbine Swift, in my opinion, is about 5 times as much fun as the P-51, and easier to fly and just nicer all around. We have a very nice video on the Turbine Swift. I hope you come down to the tent. I'm sure you'll be able to see the airplane and the film. Right now, we're using the same questionnaires about the Turbine Swift as the Lycoming Swift. And before the week's over, Stuart and I will review all these comments. I think what the thrust is going to be, and I'll make a little prediction here, that we will build a 180 tail dragger 2-place Swift first. Enough response for the turbine airplane. We'll build that kind of on a second-tier basis. And we'll also probably build a cleaned-up Comanche. The Turbine Swift we have above our speed limit imposed on us by the flutter people, but we know what the aerodynamics are, and we can use our computers to determine what the top speed and the rates of climb are. The airplane's top speed is 345 miles an hour. The airplane's cruise speed at 10,000 feet is 300 miles an hour. The rate of climb at gross weight is 4,000 feet a minute, and the airplane's rate of climb at minimum fly weight, which is 1 pilot and low fuel, is 5,900 feet a minute. So it's really a very exciting airplane, and there are a bunch of people who just love to have that machine. In fact, today Carol Shelby came by with his friend who is Baron Hilton, and they just kind of drooled over the airplane. I think we'll be able to sell a few of those airplanes, and hopefully a whole bunch of Lycoming Swift. Yes, sir. Yes, the question is, how much do the airplanes cost? And the truthful answer is, I don't really know exactly, but I give you my opinion, which may not be worth very much, because it's Piper's task to price the airplanes. But I can tell you what they should cost, and where we will be zeroing in on the airplanes. The 180 Lycoming Swift needs to sell for under $100,000, same price basically as the Mooney Lean machine. The Turbine Swift is expensive because the basic engine, the Allison B-17C, comes in a box to us without accessories and without propeller or backing plate. And our cost is $120 for the engine. So that airplane will be someplace in the $300,000 ballpark. And Millar is committed to keep the price as low as he can, but it can't be very far from that number. I'd like to see the Lycoming Swift get priced as just as low as we could possibly make it go. And I'll try and use what influence I have with Stuart to make that happen. Yes, sir. The gear will be an adaptation of what you already have, depending on what kind of dies are available. It'll be very similar. It's going to have a electrode hydraulic system that's like the one you have today, but much greater capacity. We've had a lot of problems with the Turbine Swift getting the gear up and down because it just won't hack the lows at the higher speeds. But it's a good system, but it's a low capacity system. It would be very similar, but just higher capacity. Yes, sir. The question is, do we have plans to make these existing mods, the mods we're working on, make them available to the existing Swift? That's fundamentally a Piper decision. I have great empathy for that, and I would like to see that happen wherever possible. And I've already told Stuart, and I think I've gotten a very favorable response. The only thing that might deter that is if it ends up being a severe liability problem, which I don't think it will. So I think the answer is sort of a qualified yes, but it's fundamentally a Piper production decision. I'll tell you this, and I've gotten kind of an informal nod from Stuart. We are going to build parts for the Swift, and if you all have parts
You need to tell us what you want, and we will make them for you. Until somebody says we can't do that anymore. But it's my plan to make your parts. Because, quite frankly, we can make your parts in our factory. We have a very little plant. We have a 20,000 square foot hangar. We have access to Piper's big hydraulic presses and heat treat facility. So we can make parts that you need in our slack time. In every shop you have some slack time. So we would try to make these at lower cost as we can and make them available to you in kind of a timely manner. And what I need from, I guess, you, Charlie, is a list of what you want, so we more expensive. So I need to have, you know, a shopping list of those things that you need very badly, and how many arrangement, so it makes sense for us. I figured you would, Charlie. Any other questions? Charlie? I've got to get back to the booth. I speak to the group there on. I invite you all to the booth to see the airplane and to see the video, ask any questions you might have. And I really would like you to fill out those forms, because Stuart Millard needs to know what you all think. So, and you know, if there's an overwhelming majority of people who want the 180 horsepower tail dragger Swift, that's what we're going to build. And if most of you folks want the turbine Swift, that's what we're going to build first. So please give us your comments, make them very candid, make them very objective, be kind to us. But seriously, come by and see us and fill the forms out, and thank you for having us. All right,
Christmas in August. I think probably this possibility of having new parts.
Bye.